The room looked warm and happy. Soft music played. Pink balloons floated near the ceiling. A long table was covered with wrapped gifts and cards. People laughed and talked, holding paper cups and smiling like everything was perfect. But the older woman standing near the wall did not feel perfect at all. She held a small gift in both hands. It was light, wrapped in simple paper, but it meant everything to her. She had made it herself late at night, sewing slowly, carefully, thinking about the baby she had not met yet. This baby shower was for her. Daughter in law. The older woman had arrived early. She thought it would help. She thought it would show respect. But when she walked in, no one greeted her. A few people nodded, then turned away. She told herself it was nothing. She did not want trouble. She never did. She watched her daughter-in-law move through the room with confidence, laughing loudly, hugging guests, touching her belly as people praised her. She looked happy, powerful, in control. The older woman tried to smile. She remembered when she first heard about the pregnancy. She had cried that day, not loud tears, quiet ones. She had imagined holding her grandchild, telling stories, being useful again. She had waited for that moment for years. But things had changed. For months now, her daughter-in-law had grown distant. Short replies. Cold looks. No phone calls. Still, the older woman blamed herself. Maybe she said something wrong. Maybe she tried too hard. Maybe she did not try enough. She stayed quiet. The party continued. Someone tapped a glass and made a joke. People clapped. The older woman took a small step forward, thinking this might be a good moment to say something kind. That was when it happened. Her daughter-in-law walked toward her. Her face was smiling, sweet, friendly. Anyone watching would think this was a warm family moment. She leaned in slightly. "You'll never hold my child," she whispered. The words were soft, calm, sharp. The older woman froze. For a second, she thought she had imagined it. The room was still loud. No one noticed. No one reacted. The daughter-in-law straightened up and smiled again, as if nothing had happened. The older woman felt heat rise to her face, then disappear. Her chest tightened. Her hands shook, but she held the gift tighter. She did not ask why. She did not argue. She did not cry. She looked around the room. People were laughing, taking photos, talking about baby names. Her son stood near the table, smiling, unaware of everything. That hurt more than the words. She understood something in that moment. This was not a joke. This was not a mistake. This was not said in anger. It was planned. The older woman took a slow breath. Years of experience helped her stay calm. She had survived loss. She had survived loneliness. She knew how to stand still while the world moved around her. She walked to the gift table. Carefully, she placed her small gift at the bottom. No card. No name. Then she turned around. She walked toward the door without looking back. No one stopped her. No one noticed. The party went on. Outside, the air felt cooler, quieter, real. She stood there for a moment, holding her purse, feeling the weight of what had just happened. She was hurt, yes. But something else was stronger. Clarity. She realized she had a choice. She could beg for respect, or she could walk away with dignity. She chose to walk as she reached her car. She whispered to herself, "This is not the end. This is the beginning." And somewhere behind her, inside that bright room full of gifts and smiles, a truth had already been set in motion. The older woman did not go straight home. She drove slowly through familiar streets, past small shops and quiet houses, letting her thoughts settle. Her mind replayed the whisper, the smile, and the way her son had stood there, completely unaware. She parked near an empty building she had visited long ago, a place she thought she would never return to. The walls were gray, cold, and silent. Most people would have ignored it, but to her, it was a sanctuary, a place where she could think clearly without interruption. She stepped inside. The door unlocked with a simple touch, light scanning her hand before softly welcoming her. The interior was dim at first, but then machines and screens slowly lit up, recognizing her presence. She had not been here in years, but everything was ready. Everything worked. This was not just a building. It was a lab she had helped create long ago, before raising her son, before life demanded she step away from her work. She had worked on systems designed to protect humans, not with weapons, but with awareness, intelligence, and foresight. She moved toward the main control room. Dust covered some surfaces, but screens hummed as if waiting for her. She sat in the central chair, hands resting on the console. The system greeted her with familiar words. Identity confirmed. Welcome back. For a long moment, she let herself breathe. She remembered the choices she had made, leaving the lab to raise her son. Living a quiet life, hoping peace would be enough. But today's whisper reminded her that peace could be broken at any moment. Even in her own family. She activated the system, her voice steady. Scan family structure. Detect potential conflict and influence. Data appeared on the screens. Messages, past conversations, patterns of behavior. Her daughter-in-law's actions were clear. Subtle manipulations, controlling tendencies. Hidden dismissals, signs of someone trying to dominate her son and cut her out completely. The older woman's eyes narrowed. She did not feel anger. She felt purpose. She understood that stepping away from the baby shower had not been weakness, it had been observation. She had watched, waited, and now she knew exactly what was happening. Meanwhile, her son sat at home, scrolling through his phone, a small doubt in his mind. Something felt off. He remembered little moments, short comments, cold looks, and tiny dismissals. The pieces began to fit together. The words at the baby shower echoed in his memory. "You'll never hold my child." He had ignored them at first, blaming his own fatigue or stress. But now, he saw patterns. The older woman had seen them too, but she had done nothing rash. She had let events unfold naturally, confident that truth would rise to the surface. Back at the lab, the older woman adjusted the system's parameters. It was not about controlling people. It was about showing patterns clearly. Allowing the son and, eventually, the daughter-in-law to see reality for what it was. Over the next few days, subtle changes occurred. Messages were reviewed. Conversations replayed differently in the son's mind. He noticed things he had ignored before. Meanwhile, the daughter-in-law's small manipulations began to fail. Her influence weakened as clarity took hold. The older woman watched quietly, her calm demeanor unchanged. She did not celebrate. She did not intervene directly. She only guided awareness, letting humans face themselves. One evening, as she studied the data, she whispered softly, "This is only the beginning. Awareness is the first step. Truth will follow." Far above, unseen forces observed the earth. The patterns of human behavior, the awakening of awareness, the subtle shifts in control law were noted. She knew that larger challenges could come, but for now, human choice was growing stronger. And in her quiet lab, the older woman allowed herself a small, knowing smile. The battle had begun, not with anger or confrontation, but with observation, patience, and careful action. The future was not yet decided. But for the first time in years, she felt confident that when the moment came, she would be ready. The next morning, the older woman returned home quietly. She did not announce her arrival, nor did she try to explain her absence. Inside, the house felt calm and empty, but her mind was far from still. She reviewed the events of the past day, watching how small actions had begun to ripple outward, even without her touching them directly. Her son was awake, moving slowly through the living room. He seemed distracted, as if pieces of a puzzle were slowly fitting together in his mind. He remembered her absence at the baby shower and the unusual coldness of his wife's behavior. He remembered the whisper, the words he had tried to ignore. "You'll never hold my child." For the first time, doubt crept into his thoughts. He started to question what he had accepted for months as normal. Small conversations, small gestures, subtle attempts at control all came back to him with a clarity he could not dismiss. Meanwhile, the daughter-in-law busied herself around the house, unaware that her influence was already slipping. She tried to maintain control over her husband, but his tone had changed. His words were careful now, measured. She noticed small hesitations, pauses, and unspoken judgments forming in his mind. The older woman observed quietly, not from a distance, but as a calm anchor. She did not force change. She only allowed the truth to surface. Over the next few days, small signs of honesty began to appear in the home. Conversations that would have turned tense now ended without confrontation. Decisions that would have sparked arguments were met with quiet reflection. She remembered how she had always guided her son not with force, but with example. Patience, integrity, and calm strength had taught him more than words ever could. Now, the same principles applied, but on a larger scale. Not just one person, but the entire household was adjusting, slowly, subtly. The daughter-in-law grew frustrated. She felt the tension but could not understand why. Attempts to manipulate or provoke failed. Small lies caught in their own threads, revealing themselves to anyone paying attention. She felt weaker, her power slipping, though she did not yet know why. One evening, the son spoke quietly with his mother. They sat together, not in anger or blame, but in simple reflection. The older woman did not accuse. She did not demand action. She only shared her perspective, describing how the small patterns of control and coldness had affected her, and how they were starting to affect the household. He listened carefully, absorbing her words. Slowly, he began to see the truth. The whispers, the coldness, the quiet cruelty, they were real. They were not imagined. They had been happening all along. The older woman allowed a moment of silence, letting her son process. She did not speak again, because words were no longer necessary. Awareness was growing on its own. Meanwhile, the daughter-in-law noticed the change in her husband. She tried to dismiss it, telling herself it was stress, fatigue, or mood. But deep down, she knew something had shifted. The control she had taken for granted was no longer absolute. People began to see through her facades. The older woman watched this quietly, neither happy nor angry. She only observed, knowing that awareness would always reveal the truth. Her calm presence had become the invisible force guiding the household back to balance. She knew this was only the beginning. The real work had started, not with arguments or confrontations, but with clarity and patience. Slowly, the daughter-in-law was beginning to understand that actions have consequences. And words, once spoken, carry weight far beyond the moment. That night, as she prepared for bed, the older woman whispered softly to herself, "Patience always wins. The truth will unfold on its own time," and somewhere, unseen but present, the house felt lighter, the air calm. Small changes had begun, unnoticed by most, but impossible to ignore by those paying attention. The first steps of awareness had begun, and the ripple of truth would continue to grow. The following days brought subtle but undeniable changes in the household. The older woman continued her quiet routine, moving through her home without fanfare, observing rather than interfering. She did not need to argue or confront. Patience was her greatest tool. Her son began to notice the small shifts everywhere. Conversations that once ended in tension now concluded calmly. Decisions that were normally dictated by his wife's insistence were now met with quiet negotiation or gentle compromise. He could not explain why, but the household felt lighter. Freer, the daughter-in-law grew increasingly aware of these changes. Her attempts to assert control no longer had the same effect. When she spoke sharply, she noticed hesitation in responses she had once taken for granted. Her confidence faltered, though she tried to hide it with smiles and distractions. The older woman continued to watch silently, her presence a quiet anchor. She did not celebrate the daughter-in-law's faltering, but she noted it with a sense of relief. Finally, truth and awareness were beginning to reveal themselves at the same time. The son started connecting small patterns he had ignored before. He remembered moments of subtle disrespect, brief instances where his mother's opinions were dismissed or undervalued. He realized these were not accidents. They had been consistent, carefully hidden under charm and politeness. One afternoon, he approached his mother in the quiet of her home. They sat together at the table, their hands folded over cups of tea. No accusations were made. Instead, he asked questions, softly, honestly. He wanted to understand, not to judge. The older woman shared her feelings calmly, recounting the baby shower, the whispered words, and the quiet humiliation she had endured. She did not demand apologies or action. She simply explained her experience, allowing her son to see things as they truly were. As he listened, understanding slowly grew. The realization of manipulation and control hit him gently but firmly. He began to see his wife's actions in a new light, and the clarity brought both pain and relief. The weight of confusion began to lift. The daughter-in-law noticed the change in him. She tried to mask her worry with casual behavior, but it was too late. He no longer ignored the small signs. He was awake to the patterns of control and disrespect she had relied on. One evening, she confronted her own feelings. For the first time, she admitted to herself that fear had driven her actions. She had tried to control, to dominate, because she feared losing her place in the family. She had not considered the consequences, nor the harm her words had caused. Meanwhile, the older woman remained patient, her calm demeanor never wavering. She knew the daughter-in-law's realization would come in time. She also knew that truth, when presented gently and allowed to unfold naturally, was far more powerful than force. By the end of the week, the household atmosphere had shifted. Tension decreased. Conversations grew honest. Actions were tempered by reflection rather than fear. Awareness was spreading, quietly but steadily. The older woman observed everything with satisfaction, not pride. She understood that the process was ongoing. People would continue to make mistakes, but now, they were capable of seeing them clearly. Awareness had begun, and with it, the possibility of real change. As she prepared for bed that night, she whispered softly, "Truth is stronger than fear. Dignity is stronger than control." And in the quiet home, for the first time in months, the air felt lighter. Everyone was beginning to breathe freely again. The subtle work of clarity and patience was proving its power. And the household was slowly learning to live with honesty and respect. Asterisk. The day the baby was born brought a quiet but profound change to the household. The older woman arrived at the hospital early, her presence calm and steady. She had waited for this moment, not with expectation of drama, but with patience and a quiet hope that understanding could finally take root. The daughter-in-law sat in the hospital bed, holding her newborn, her hands trembling. The child's cries were soft and fragile, and for the first time, the mother felt a real sense of vulnerability. She looked up at the older woman, guilt and fear written clearly on her face. The daughter-in-law began, her voice breaking. "I was wrong. I was cruel. I didn't think about anyone but myself." The older woman did not respond immediately. She only observed, allowing the words to hang in the air. She had witnessed enough hurt to know that apologies could not erase pain, but acknowledgement was the first step toward repair. The daughter-in-law continued, her eyes full of tears. "I was afraid you would take my place. I was wrong to say those things. I am sorry." The older woman stepped closer, gently. "I never wanted to take your place. I only wanted peace. And I wanted to be part of this child's life someday. That is all." The daughter-in-law looked down at her baby, then back at the older woman. Her words faltered, then steadied. "I want my child to grow up without fear. I don't want to push away those who care." The older woman nodded softly. She extended her arms, and the daughter-in-law handed the baby to her. For the first time, she held her grandchild. Warm, alive, human. The baby was small, but the moment felt enormous. Her heart filled with a calm joy. She whispered softly, "You are safe. You are loved." The baby cooed and blinked up at her, unaware of the tension that had led to this moment. Outside, the household would never be the same. The daughter-in-law had been humbled, not by force, but by clarity and understanding. The son, standing quietly beside them, observed the moment with gratitude and relief. Respect had returned, slowly but surely. Weeks passed, and life settled into a quieter rhythm. The older woman visited often, not to control or interfere, but simply to be present. The daughter-in-law learned humility and patience. The son learned the power of observation and listening, and the baby grew, surrounded by love rather than fear. The older woman reflected quietly on the journey. Walking out of that baby shower had not been a defeat, it had been the start of change. Patience, dignity, and clarity had proven stronger than anger, manipulation, or control. She understood something essential. Power was not about domination. True strength was the ability to stay calm in the face of cruelty, to observe, to guide quietly, and to allow truth to unfold naturally. The household learned to live with honesty, kindness, and respect. No one needed to win a fight, because awareness and dignity had already changed the balance. As she watched her grandson sleep for the first time in her arms, she whispered softly, "The war that began with a whisper has ended with a cradle." And in that simple, quiet moment, she realized the greatest victories are those that unfold without noise, without spectacle, and without force, just patience, understanding, and love. Humanity, even on a small scale within her family, had chosen freedom and dignity. And that choice, she knew, was worth more than any victory ever claimed by anger.